For the longest time, I thought being soft and being nurturing meant that I was a sweet person. And that's kind of true. I thought saying yes, being available as much as I could, especially in all of my relationships, meant I was valuable. But in reality, I was overgiving, over apologizing, and shrinking myself just to be liked. I was stuck in a cycle of wounded feminine energy. I avoided confrontation. I let people walk all over me because I didn't want to seem difficult. I waited for things to change instead of taking action. I thought if I just stayed patient, loved more, gave more, that things would just work out for me. Does this sound familiar? If you've ever felt like you're constantly giving, struggling to set boundaries, feeling powerless in your own life, this video is for you. Before we talk about healthy versus wounded energy, I want to throw up on the screen really quickly feminine and masculine energy so that way you can see both. Before we get into this video, you can rewatch my last video if you need to get caught up on feminine versus masculine energy. Both are powerful and both are within us. Now we're going to get into wounded feminine energy. What is wounded feminine energy? Feminine energy in its healthy form is powerful. It's radiant, confident, and deeply intuitive. Healthy feminine energy looks like receiving with ease, letting love, success, and abundance flow to you effortlessly, emotional intelligence, but setting boundaries with grace, magnetism and confidence, knowing your worth without over-explaining or proving yourself. When your feminine energy is wounded, it shifts into powerlessness, overgiving, and self-abandonment. Wounded feminine energy looks like people-pleasing and a lack of boundaries, saying yes when you really want to say no, over-explaining and over-apologizing, feeling like you have to justify your worth, overgiving in relationships, pouring into others with receiving very little in return, feeling stuck or powerless, like you're just waiting for things to change and to get better, instead of taking action, fear of confrontation or rejection, avoiding difficult conversations at all costs. Can you remember a time when you were in deep, wounded feminine energy? What did it look like for you? For me, it looked like people-pleasing, a whole lot of people-pleasing, no boundaries. I thought that I needed to do everything for everyone all the time without pouring into me or without taking care of me. Did you struggle with over-explaining, people-pleasing, and waiting for people to change? At some point, I did too. I actually spent a lot of my childhood people-pleasing, over-explaining, not having any boundaries, constantly pouring into everyone else's cup but my own. I wasn't resting. I felt guilty if I rested. And at the same time, I was frustrated that people never really thought of me to consider me. This comes from not having boundaries. So I was frustrated that they weren't respecting boundaries, but I also wasn't asserting boundaries. What was the wake-up call that made you realize that this wasn't healthy? I realized this wasn't healthy when I constantly felt drained from doing so much for others, and I started to resent them a little bit and feel like I'm thinking of them, I'm considering them, I'm doing everything for them. Like, what about me? Why does it not cross their mind to think about me? And as a people pleaser, now a former people pleaser, at some point, enough is enough. You're sick and tired, and you're sick and tired. You have to start learning and asserting some boundaries. Setting boundaries and sticking up for myself and choosing to be considerate for people who are considerate of me gave me so much confidence from childhood to teenager to my adult life. Where does wounded feminine energy come from? Just like wounded masculine energy, it does not magically appear, it is learned. Where wounded feminine energy starts. As a child, were you taught to be nice, be polite, be sweet at all costs? Were you taught to be accommodating and be quiet and put others first? Fear of rejection or abandonment? Do you equate boundaries to losing people? Societal expectations? Have you been taught that self-sacrifice is the key to receiving love and validation? For many of us, saying no feels wrong, or at least it used to. Prioritizing ourselves feels selfish, standing firm feels aggressive, but none of this is true. Healing wounded feminine energy, learning that receiving, setting standards, and standing in your worth is okay. How to heal wounded feminine energy. Stop overgiving and start receiving. It's okay to let others support you and help you. I'm going to go over 4 ways, 4 steps, 4 tools that you can use to heal your wounded feminine energy. 1, stop overgiving and start receiving. Next time you feel the need to earn love or earn validation, pause. I want you to ask yourself, Giving from love or fear, and if it's fear, I'm pulling back, and that's okay. Step 2. Learn how to set boundaries. I know this is hard to do. It's like working out. It's like learning a new skill. You have to practice. You have to strengthen the muscles, and over time, it will improve. Here's the shift that I want you to make. Start small. Say no to something that you don't even necessarily want to say no to, something very, very minor. It can be something so small, but practice saying no. Start learning how to assert boundaries. That way, when you get to a bigger boundary that actually matters, that you actually want to say no to, it's not as hard. Step 3, stop over-explaining and own your presence. Have you ever found yourself over-explaining very simple decisions? Here's the shift that I want you to make. Practice saying things simply and directly, no over-explaining, no fluff, just say what you want to say. Step 4, rebalance your feminine energy. Here's what to practice every day to shift out of wounded feminine energy. Take up space. Walk confidently, own your presence, and speak with intention. Say no and let it stand. No apologies, no justifications, no is a full sentence. Start small, but practice saying no. My favorite, romanticize your life. Treat yourself the way that you want to be treated. Treat yourself the way you wish others would treat you. Let yourself receive compliments, help, support without deflecting, without feeling guilty. Healing your wounded feminine energy isn't about becoming less feminine. It's actually about becoming fully empowered in your feminine energy. The moment you stop over-explaining, over-giving, and start standing in your worth, you'll see how people respond differently to you. Have you ever struggled with wounded feminine energy? Did any of this resonate with you or hit home for you? If it did, make sure you hit subscribe, because this is just the beginning of the energy shifts that we're going to do, and I'll see you in the next video.